Appreciate that. So I do want to say a lot's happened since we last met. We've gone through some many crises in the air, crises with water, crises with transportation, crises with housing. But I will say I was quite proud to see how the communities came out and supported one another throughout that. And plenty pointing fingers, people can after the fact say all kinds of things, but what people did in the moment, I thought really mattered. And I greatly appreciate the regional support that I witnessed. I was on the phone with Martha quite a bit about that. And I was just blown away by people even outside of our region coming in and helping out other groups. And so with that, we did have some unfortunate loss of life with the miscommunication with the helicopter and plane and others within our region. So I just wanted to start off with just a moment of silence, just to think about, reflect on, this past season, if you will. Thank you. Can you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Can we have roll it?
McGraw, Privet, Mr. Chambers,
Present.
Charles City County, Mr. Atkins,
Present.
Mr. Patterson, Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll,
Here.
Mr. Holland, Mr. Engel,
Here.
Ms. Schneider,
Here.
Mr. Miller, Mr. Petrosky, Mr. Davy, Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour, Mr. Lyle, Mr. Cosby, Hanover County, Mr. Davis,
Present.
Ms. Dibble, Ms. Pritchard,
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Here.
Mr. Waddell, Henrico County, Mr. Cooper,
Present.
Reverend Nelson,
Here.
Mr. Rogish,
Here.
Ms. Roundtree,
Present.
Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Mackey, Mr. Bass, New Kent County, Ms. Jordan,
Here.
Ms. Pearson, Mr. Hathaway,
Present.
Powhatan County, Mr. Donati, Mr. McClung, Mr. Powers, Ms. Winnell, City of Richmond, Dr. Newbell,
Here.
Mr. Brayton, Ms. Robertson, Ms. Knight,
Diane, I will just ask you to know Mr. Toole is here. Until Ms. Knight is appointed, so apologies for that. I was too hasty in making the update.
okay, Mr. George,
Present.
okay,
And
certifying you do have a quorum.
I think Ms. Jordan is on, but she has not accepted the invitation to move over as a panelist, so.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you. I have a approved request from Milton Hathaway, Misty Browntree, Catherine Jordan, and Neil Spoonhour. To remotely participate based on a personal matter, specifically scheduling conflicts that prevents attendance in person. I will now entertain a motion to confirm that the decision to approve the members' request was in conformance with the PlanRVA policy for remote participation of members. And the voice of the remotely participating members can be heard by all persons at the primary meeting location. So moved. And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign?
Do we need to verify that each one?
Who were those? They can be dispatched, given they're all the same reason.
No, that they can all be heard. We have to make sure they all can be heard.
That's Yeah.
This is Catherine Jordan. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Misty Browntree? Can you-
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Neil Spoonhour?
Hey, good morning, y'all. I'm sorry I missed the roll, but I am here.
Good. Milton Hathaway?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent.
And I apologize, there were multiple voices on their motion in a second. Who were the people that we heard for? Thank you.
Just pick somebody. So several of us.
Quite all right.
They were
All right.
just picked,
I
but-
think the whole room's hate the motion, so just pick somebody.
All right, any considerations for amendments to our agenda? All right, moving on. Now, time for public comment. If anyone would like to speak at this time? Not seeing any, I'll close public comments on. We have our approval for our November 14th, it's hard to, long time ago since we met. November 14th, a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a motion?
Second.
Good, first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Approve our December 5th, meeting minutes. Motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Moving right along. All right. Chair reports, I guess best I should just read off this or. So in our executive committee, we approved, a partnership with, housing affordability group so that we could continue our work for, extending affordable housing in our region. But I do want to read off. It's not really a conflict of interest, but it could potentially be seen that way. So I'm just trying to be transparent. This memo serves as a notice that our chair is on the board of directors for the Partnership for Housing Affordability. That's the group we're partnering with. A nonprofit organization dedicated to crafting innovative policies, advocating for change, and creating a region where housing is accessible and equitable for all. Ms. Chiplow represents PlanRVA on our board here. As their elected chair in December 2024 to serve a term of calendar years 2025, 2026. She receives no compensation. There's no financial reason. The reason why she's even on that board is as a role of PlanRVA. And this is so she's the director of PlanRVA. We're in a partnership with that nonprofit group, but there's no financial supporting, but in all transparency, just making it clear. Did I fumble through that or is that?
You did great.
Okay. It's a really important priority. So we also looked at our mission.
The commission is being asked on recommendation from the executive committee, so there is not necessary to be a second if it's a motion from committee, but the motion on the table is for the full commission to approve the resolution in the packet authorizing the partnership with Partnership for Housing Affordability.
Right, thanks.
Second.
Then you just gotta call it.
Yeah, we can just vote.
Okay. So all in favor of adopting this resolution?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
So now we move on to our mission alignment and our federal priorities. Good discussion item.
I think it's just an update from you to the board about the executive committee conversation.
Okay, so just to keep you fully aware, we have had considerations about what we'll do if certain funding ceases from the federal government for our region. This isn't for us to really discuss at this moment, but feel free to go back to people you know on the executive committee that they want to bring it forward. As we know right now, there has been no evidence of funding coming down for us to be having been frozen. But if it does happen, our executive committee is ready to meet very quickly to make a recommendation to you all, so that you can all come back to us. So again, I don't know what to say on that, but just other than we are 80% federally funded, and our board is hoping we can find other ways of funding so that we're not coming to you with this in the future of potentially freezing of funds or things. But just know that we will keep you in the loop as much as possible should there be any changes.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
Could you tell us what that figure is approximately?
I cannot, I can just tell you one example of something that happened. And then, so there was at one point, I'll give you 2 examples. At one point, there was a directive on a Monday that we're gonna freeze funding for all programs. And then we didn't know if that meant all programs or just all certain programs. And then on Wednesday, that was rescinded. So Mark and I were talking, by the time we finished talking, before we could even send out information, it was changed. And then just 48 hours ago, her team went in to try to access the funding that we were already allocated, and that window was not present, but apparently it might be open again. So I just don't know. I don't want to have a big discussion about something that may or may not happen, but I want you to know that we are prepared to make a recommendation as fast as we can.
Makes sense.
That's.
Mr. Chair, follow-up question.
Yes.
I think the question was, how much money are we talking about? How much money are we actually allocated in the budget for that, and how much are we looking at getting cut off? Because that's what we, you know, it potentially would end up having to make up. That's the question.
So our total budget for this fiscal year is about $5 million, and 80% of that is about $4 million. At this point in time, we have identified at least 3 grants that we think are at risk. Those are the $1.5 million award that Mr. Rogish announced in December for the Transportation Planning Organization. That's a multi-year grant, and so not all of that $1.5 million was programmed in this fiscal year. So just want to be kind of clear about award versus period. The Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is a $1 million award, also a multi-year award. We have about $400,000 remaining on that particular grant award, and that was programmed to go through the end of this fiscal year and through December of the calendar year. So again, multi-year award. Our SEDS planning grant is the award that Dr. McGraw was referring to that was removed from the system yesterday, and our grant rep is emailing me this morning saying that it's there. She can see it. So Diane's trying to verify that, but that's a $50,000 grant award, and it expires in September of 2025. Our MPO funding is the lion's share of our operating budget. As of now, we have not been notified of any changes with that particular program. That represents about $2.5 to $3 million of operating and pass-through funding for the agency. However, we have pending grant reimbursement requests submitted for the period ending December 31st. It's a reimbursement program. The State Department of Rail and Public Transit this morning during our executive committee meeting approved our draw request for on one funding stream. The VDOT side from Federal Highway Administration is still in process. It's a paper submission, so we just don't have line of sight to that draw system. And we're waiting to see the results of that draw request. So it's very much grant dependent. I think the risk exposure at this point is probably, conservatively speaking, I would say probably around 30 to 40% of the federal awards that we have.
Mr. Chair, follow-up.
Yes.
I'd rather be proactive than reactive. What I would suggest is that we actually have a letter drafted and ready to go to the governor of Virginia and our legislative delegates, both the Congress, House, and the Senate, explaining why this money and these fundings are critical to what we actually do here. Have it sitting there ready, and if something happens, we pull the trigger and send it, instead of having to worry about having to come back and have an executive meeting and decide whether we're gonna do it or not.
I appreciate that, and that's exactly what our executive committee discussed, and I will be having that letter drafted after this afternoon.
Well, great minds think alike, we're gonna.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, reassurance. So we're good, just wanted to make sure that I put it out there because it's important.
Is that by consensus that that's the direction to go?
I'm not seeing any opposition to us advocating for what we said are our priorities and what we think is important, and I will make sure that you all get to see it before it goes out, or if it never, it may never go out, but I mean, I'll at least make sure that after we draft it, we at least share it with you and yeah. Okay, I don't have any other updates other than I did ask, and you'll hear this later on, so it's not really a discussion item for now, but I did ask Ms. Schickel to look at what happened during our water crisis and how communities and localities helped each other and supported each other. Because I think it's really easy for there to be a headline news story of saying this person or this thing, or if that wouldn't have happened. And that's really easy looking back to point fingers, but what people actually did to help and fix things, I think is really important, because that shows much more character than a mistake or an accident or a random act. I don't, so I did read through Hanover's post-action, which I was appreciative of. I have not had a chance to read through everyone else's post-action reports, but it is good to be aware of those things. So that's all that I have for my items. We are moving on to audit finance facilities. And who's going to give us an update on that?
Mr. Davis, do you want to have any opening comments before?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Executive. So the Finance Committee did meet, and customarily, we will review finances, approve those, send them to the board, full commission for review. During this last meeting, there were some discussions about providing financials with a more comprehensive and informative approach to specific line items. And I want to be clear, there wasn't a reporting issue. There wasn't any concern with any of our GAAP standards, generally accepted accounting principles. But there were some formatting issues that were brought up, and there were some reporting issues. And when I say reporting, you got to be careful when you're talking finances that you don't transpose words. Not reporting of financial data, but on the report itself, we felt like there were some items that could have been a little bit more informative for the Finance Committee. And so there was a discussion about reconvening the Finance Committee rather hastily between that meeting on the 27th and this meeting. And it was ultimately determined that we would just bring those finances to the full commission and have everybody look at it here. Not to indicate that there were any problems, but there were some desires from the Finance Committee to have reporting done with a little bit more information than what was originally provided to the Finance Committee. And with that, I do want to thank Mr. Holland for his tremendous leadership on the Finance Committee. He was not present, and I served as the acting chair for the Finance Committee for that meeting. And I believe everybody who was there is in this room today. So thank you, madam, and we appreciate that.
I would like to, if it's okay, introduce Lauren Shepard to all of you. She is our new Chief Finance and Administration Officer. Her first day here on staff at PlanRVA was the January 27th Finance Committee meeting. And so I'll turn it over to you, Lauren, to just do some review as a follow-up to Mr. Davis's introduction.
Thank you. And again, I'm Lauren Shepard. I joined the team in January. I'll take a minute to just give you a little introduction, and then I'll get into the materials if that's okay. I am a CPA. I've spent the last 8 years with the Community Foundation and also have previous experience in corporate and other nonprofit roles. I've spent my first few weeks here getting up to speed, meeting the team, meeting with boards and committees, and certainly navigating how the recent executive orders impact this organization. I really enjoy working with boards and helping them get a deeper understanding of the financials. I'm sure this group knows When boards better understand the financials, they're better able to drive strategy. So if there's an area that you'd like to learn more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me in the future. If you'll turn to page 14 of the PDF in your packet, it's also here on the screen. As Mr. Davis said, the Audit Facilities and Finance Committee met in January to review the fiscal year 2025 Q2 financials. Please note that period covers July through December 2024. As noted in your materials, and as Mr. Davis said, the committee had a few questions around the presentation and format of the year-to-date performance compared to budget. The materials reviewed with the committee are included in your packet on pages 20 to 24, but I'd actually like to turn your attention to the updated version of those materials beginning on PDF page 17. Again, I want to be very clear in noting that budgeted revenue and expense amounts have not changed on this updated version. The updates are limited to the presentation and format only to more closely align actual line items with the board approved version of the budget. And we plan to present in this format for the remainder of the fiscal year 2025. An executive summary of the activity is reflected on PDF page 15. Overall expenses are tracking at 54% of the annual budgeted amount. This is appropriate for this point in the fiscal year, given timing of certain expenses, including front-loaded retirement contributions for executive staff, as well as use of additional grant funding for certain expenditures such as planned public outreach. There are additional line items above the 50% reasonableness target that staff has been following up on. These are noted on that budget. Since these materials were drafted and distributed, we were able to analyze those variances. Most have very reasonable explanations. There are a few that we're digging further into the details on, and we'll come back to the commission if further discussion around them is needed. In a moment, I'll ask for questions on the materials, but I do also want to note that we are starting to see implications of the recent executive orders as just discussed. So we're seeing pauses in reimbursement, but updates to that even as of the last hour. We've reached out to our contacts and we're taking steps to prepare, which will be a focus at the next finance committee meeting. This preparation includes developing a risk analysis to incorporate cash forecasting, current grant reimbursement status, our third-party commitments, and grants in the pipeline. And this was part of my plan for onboarding and offering greater support to Martha and the leadership team for increasing utility of our reporting tools for management, as well as improved reporting for the commission, excuse me. It's certainly now even more important as we assess those impactive changes to some of our funded programs and the looming expiration of the continuing resolution. And as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Atkins, the federal budget deadline of March 15th. I'll pause there if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
The discrepancy for the professional fees, that due to something that PlanRVA was contracted to do through the CBK, was reimbursed to CBK, is that what caused that?
Contracted services.
So it says, professional fees, 159% is the actual expense on the 17,000. We budgeted 74. But I know that we had, I think through the CBTA had contracted through PlanRVA to do some work for us. And so I just want to make sure people understand that could be what the discrepancy is. Am I right on that?
The piece of it.
Piece of it, okay.
Yeah, and the big driver there is that there's that advertising line item. And I'll say that there were some additional grant funds received around some planned public outreach. So those were anticipated as we got more revenue, we were able to increase those expenses. And then I think that's the big one on that category for the overall.
Yeah, so Mr. Carroll, we did undertake the website development for CBTA, and Lauren's referring to the launch of our social pinpoint web page for PlanRVA's side of things on the PlanRVA Engaged.
Yep.
So both of these things are reimbursed, and have been, but are we're outside of the budget plan when we adopted in June.
Just want to make sure people understand there was a reason for it.
Yes.
There's offsetting revenues.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's the point I was gonna make is, so it's got the budget, it's got the expenses, but what it doesn't calculate, so to Mr. Carroll's point,
Yeah.
that there was some additional work. To Mr. Engel's point, there were offsetting revenues, that revenues just aren't reported here. So while that 159 is indicative of what was approved by the budget, if there was a line in there that showed additional revenue came in that was then allocated and appropriated for that, that number would look somewhat different, but it is a correct correlation, but there are offsetting revenues. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the audit finance and village committee report?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the full commission approve the audit finance facilities report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I don't see him.
Yeah, out of town.
Okay. Is there somebody here to give an update on the public outreach and engagement? All right, if not, I'll move on. Oh,
I know that, oh, okay.
okay.
So we did do the, we had the equity group update information, so we had our first meeting of the equity group. Group's purpose is to address equity, and the needs of transportation disadvantages and advise the MPO through CT or CTAC on issues, plans, studies, and other matters concerning the MPO's 3 Cs, urban transportation planning processes and effects of transportation disadvantaged populations. The work group members are volunteers. I'm one of them. Cameron's one of them. Mr. Hathaway is on the, and then we have some community members as well. Review, so the work group members are volunteers from our TPO, CTAC, and PlanRVA Public Outreach and Engagement Committee. Current tasks of the work group include reviewing best practices and recommended adopting a compensation policy for the TPO and commissions to consider in preparation for FY 2026. Compensation may include various forms of recognition or remunerations for work groups, advisory committees, focus groups, and public meeting participants. And again, I think we're looking to try to be creative about some of those things. Sometimes it might be, you know, providing food, and that is you know, a benefit. And also there are other things like cards or money, or and trying to determine what that might look like. To make it so that people are respected for their input into what we're looking for. You know, I think that sometimes communities are reached out to see what they need, and we want to honor the fact that they're giving us their time and information. So thanks.
Thanks. Any questions or comments? Thank you for the update. And now we move to our executive direction report.
Good morning. I think Bill just gave a handout of paper, so I'll refer you to the bottom sheet there. It is a reproduction of a handout that you saw at the joint annual meeting if you were in attendance. It's a stapled package that looks like this. This is just putting it back in front of you again to give you an update about our efforts to coalesce the regional strategic plan, which is part of this year's key imperatives and work program. So this handout represents the goals that we intend to advertise for Virginia Code, inviting members of the public to participate in our symposium, which is scheduled for March 14th at the Richmond Convention Center downtown, and ultimately coming to the Commission for action in June. The public notice and input requirements are in code as it relates to planning district commission's requirement to prepare a regional strategic plan. And this document serves as the guidance material for that. Opportunity to give comment on the current planning efforts, as well as these overarching plan goals, will be part of the program for the symposium, with specific emphasis on input on our long-range transportation plan for the region, as well as our comprehensive economic development strategy. There will be opportunities to connect also, and I think there's some additional information in your packets or floating around in the office that we've pushed out with regard to digital opportunities to participate. That have QR codes and links, but we are asking for your help in spreading the word as we try to engage the public in these planning efforts as well as the overarching goals. So that by the time we bring this for formal action in June, it's a well prepared vision. So again, just to kind of recap, the regional strategic plan is this coalescence of the subject matter specific plans that we have throughout the region, our long-range transportation plan, our comprehensive economic plan, our climate action plan, our hazard mitigation plan, our natural resources plan. If you think of each of those specific plans as chapters in the regional strategy, this document that we've handed out is the representation of the overarching vision for those goals. And so that will be what's subject to public comment and on the docket for approval by the board so that we can submit that to the state as part of our annual reporting at the end of the fiscal year. Any questions? I feel like we repeat this a lot in our meetings, but I just want to make sure we're all tracking with where we're headed.
Based on what you've seen so far, how much difference do you think this regional plan would vary from what we currently have?
So I think there's two kind of fundamental differences. One, we've historically reported on our regional strategic plan at the component level. And so this, in some ways, I think is a little bit more innovative and it helps sort of coalesce all of that and bring it into more of a strategic vision for the region. So from a structure and format perspective, that's a kind of a primary difference. The vision goals, which we hope that we would get your feedback on, we hope, really frankly, don't look that profoundly different than what we've all been talking about probably for a long time. We took great care to make sure that this language was reflective of, and in many cases lifted directly from the local comprehensive and other local strategic plans. And so, from a staff perspective, we believe that these 5 vision statements are deeply grounded in what already is in existence in aggregate from the local planning vision documents. And more so as a reflection of that and an alignment. So I think that that's the piece that's different, not so much the substance of the content, but the way that we're framing it and how we're trying to use this information to drive the focus of those subject matter plans.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to the next.
Thank you, appreciate it. Just included in your packet for reference is that summary. I'll just add as a footnote, we did get some input. I created that document summarizing regional support through conversations that I had with various representatives of the affected local governments. And I did after, I know, Henrico, if you'd like me to share the materials from the staff. So just wanted to also just make sure that we named the role that Henrico's Emergency Operations Center played in providing various supports. So I failed to mention in the report about their distribution of water to St. Mary's Hospital and the VCU to be able to cover during the crisis. Also many distribution hubs as the area of impact kind of grew over the series of days. And so I think just some useful facts to be able to provide is that during this period of time, there was an activated 24-hour call center. And also, I think it's just really helpful to understand from a magnitude perspective. And I think Hanover, you probably have very similar stats as well as Richmond, but sourced and coordinated over 100 tractor trailer loads of bottled water, facilitated 20 tanker loads of potable water, responded to over 7,000 calls, and completed over 800 deliveries to homes, daycares, and dialysis centers. So truly, as Dr. McGraw mentioned, this was a regional crisis with a regional response, and there was a lot of collaboration that happened and leadership across the region, not just from the communities that were affected, but by our greater surrounding area to be able to support. So I just echo the thanks to everybody for helping us get through that pretty rough week. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate you putting this together too. Gives us perspective on why we need to collaborate and why we come together. And I thought it was interesting on some social media platforms during, like, no sooner did we hear about it, someone said, there should be a regional plan for this. Yes, there should. And so that's why we're here. Thank you for the update on that. You can go back to.
The other items in my report, just are for reference, the intergovernmental and environmental reviews, and then just because it always bears repeating, we would love your help in sharing the word about the regional symposium. There's a flyer in your packet. On page 32, QR code right there to be able to register. We have digital copies as well. If anybody would like them, we'd love to be able to ask each of you to spread the word in your districts and with your interested residents. This really is geared toward members of the public to be able to participate and engage on these topics. So this is a replacement of what we've for the last 2 years hosted here at PlanRVA and PlanRVA Day. We've outgrown the space, so we're really excited about that, hence the partnership with the convention center who's hosting us.
Is there a digital one on your Facebook page right now that I could share or no?
Yeah, and we have it in the toolkit as well online, so I can make sure that we send a link out to everybody to the toolkit that has all the the great digital content.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so much. And I think that is the end of my report.
Excellent. Any questions for Ms. Sickle? All right, well, it's gonna be my pleasure to introduce Mike Jones. I'm gonna do this completely from memory, so I'm probably gonna butcher your history. I apologize in advance if I do, but if I recall, Mike Jones has served as a town manager. He has served as a local police chief. He has served as the Capitol Police Chief. And he's been a security expert, so to speak. But I think probably the most important strength he has is communication. And I think you'll get that when he starts to tell his story. So with that short introduction, Mike Jones, can you please talk to us about the importance of communication for public safety?
First off, I want to thank you for this opportunity. And I really want to praise you on what you do. Because so much of what we do is based upon communication. How do we talk? Now, I've been accused of being somewhat lengthy. I'll try to bring that in. Let me give you an example of one of our crisis in a community. I've been Baltimore City's public safety consultant for many years now. I was brought up during the Freddie Gray riots and consulted with the police department because it was a crisis. People were not talking to each other, both internally and externally. Blame was being thrown, that no answers were being given. There was a lot of enmity across the entire board. I have a lengthy role with housing authority. Housing authority, people say, well, that's the forgotten place, and so many people live there, but they have no voice. So as the case was spiraling out of control, the police department was against the community. They brought in Anne Arundel County for support. Anne Arundel County and Baltimore City are about as different as day and night. So one of the things that I did was I was sitting there, because I've done an extensive amount of work the west end of Baltimore and getting the housing authority to help the people who actually live there. Here's what happened. The police department had not enough officers, so they had to bring in Anne Arundel police. Anne Arundel police aren't used to policing inner city. They're doing what's called urban nice city. And so they're looking at the crowds, and the crowds are looking at them. And all I did was smell gunpowder in the way. Something was gonna happen. People were not talking. The police were not afraid, but they didn't know what to do because there was mixed messages from them. So I'm looking at the crowd. The crowd, it's them versus us. And I saw one of my friends in the housing authority. And you've got the police here, a mixed Anne Arundel and several other state police. Then you had the community that was coming forward, coming out of schools. Schools didn't communicate with anyone, so they let the children out and they just came right to the fun. It was big event, however, it was fraught with concern of what's going to happen. As the tension built, I was just feeling the fear on the enforcement side. So I told the commander, I said, I'll be back. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going over there to talk to somebody. It was like crossing the great divide. Here I am walking between us versus them, which is a very bad thing to have in an urban environment. I get over there to my friend in the housing authority, and immediately everyone's looking at me. It's predominantly a youthful crowd, and you know what youth is like. They have no filter on what they say. I won't use the language they used, but it was something like, who the hell is he? And so I spoke to him, and I'm talking to the housing authority gentleman who used to be a gang member. He returned his life around. And so the rumbling was going on, and I said, well, what's getting ready to happen? He said, I don't know. He said, but I think you got an idea. So some of the kids came up to me and said, who are you? What are you doing? I said, right now I'm looking for something to eat. And the kids were like, what do you do? I said, I'm a consultant. Well, what's that? I said, sometimes I wonder myself. I said, but right now I was talking to my friend. I said, the topic turned to fried bologna. How does fried bologna have a topic in any municipal discussion? Well, the children had never, but the teenagers never heard of it. And just so happened, I asked, I said, well, where's the nearest place where we can get some really good stuff? And the teenagers said, well, what is fried bologna? I said, well, you want some? And I had Baltimore's charge card in my pocket. So we go over to this place, and I come back, like, it took a while for them to make it, but like 200 fried bologna sandwiches. We bring it back, and the first thing I did was sit on the curb. Imagine that, all the kids are standing up, and they're waiting for something else. They're waiting to fight, they're waiting to cause damage, they're waiting just to do the fun things. All of a sudden, the aroma of fried bologna started drifting through the crowd. That smells good. So I'm sitting on the curb, and we start passing them out. And then while we do that, an amazing thing happened. Well, what do you do, Mr. Jones? I said, well, I'm a consultant to the city, and to the PD, and to the housing authority. And what's a consultant? I said, we talk. And I said, we're pretty good at talking. When we talk, we get things done. What's your name? And I said, look at my name, Mike Jones. I said, I never worry about identity theft because there are like 10,000 of me. And I said, by the way, I know the real Mike Jones. Whoops, there he is. And of course, that just got the crowd knowing that Mike Jones, the rapper, that I actually knew him. But too many times we build silos. I am taking care of my people and my people alone. No, there's no such thing as my people, it's our people. And when you sit down and talk with people and you explain them and you use your first name, you don't have to be Mr. or Mrs. Hi, I'm Mike. And this is what I do. Well, tell me your name. Meanwhile, the police department's going nuts because they're standing over there waiting for something to happen. You see this crowd coalescing around me. And I get a call on my phone from the district commander. He said, what's happening over there? We facing a fight? I said, no. He said, we're basically facing another food run. I said, we're over here eating fried bologna sandwiches. And I said, I want you to send a couple of your officers over. And so he sends some of the younger officers over, and they've got that walk with trepidation, like, did I do something wrong? I've got to go to the other side. And all of a sudden, the conversation just slipped, So what's your first name, officer? It's Fred, it's Mary. I said, meet my friends. And all of a sudden, the discussion of, well, what's that thing on your belt? And what's a radio? And where are you from? And did you grow up here? And the whole situation went from fear to a long, drawn-out conversation filled with discussions of is the bologna better when it's blackened, or does it have better with mustard on it? And the conversation just went away from the Freddie Gray case. And then fortunately it turned back to discussions with some of the police commanders that were brought over who explained what happened. Yeah, it was a bad thing. It was a thing that, so many things that were so avoidable. Some of it was institutional. Baltimore City was going through a big change in policy, a big change in where the jail was and how they handled things. But this so-called problem, I got the watch command, I said, look, let's move these lines forward. Let's don't move forward in a barricaded subject or riot line. Let's let these officers mingle. Let's get them to talk. So they start coming over. I said, send your younger officers first. You know, what I call the puppies in the police world. So they came out and all of a sudden it went from an adversarial us versus them. Sun was out and all of a sudden conversations began. And it got to be around 4 o'clock. I said, well, I'll see y'all later. Miss Joe, you gonna be back tomorrow? I said, wow. You gonna bring some more bologna sandwiches? I said, probably, bring a few more things. And so I stuck around and of course, police withdrew for the day. And in the start of the new day, we got there first. The police got there first and the aroma of fried bologna and onions. It was like, all of a sudden the crowd came over to them. And once we got that started, I told the officers, use your first name. Not officer so-and-so, I'm Mike. And get to know these kids. And we got to talking about things that happen over in certain districts. They asked about the Freddie Gray case and what happened. And the officers very candid. They all of a sudden they found common ground. But yeah, sometimes we get afraid, but we don't know you, and you don't know us. And that's when I said, you know, why don't we just sit down and talk about us? I told them my story. And it was perpetuated with a few longer than necessary stories. But the length of those stories put a different perspective on everybody. Because like they shut up but everybody started talking. And I facilitated by getting the housing authority people to talk to the kids out there. And we asked the kids, well, what do you think's gonna go on? What really happened? And they all said, well, we don't know because we weren't there, but you know, let me tell you about my story as a police officer. I grew up in the Western District. Really? Where'd you go to school? And 3 or 4 of them went to the same school that these teenagers went to. Did you have Mrs. So-and-so? And all of a sudden, conversation, I had Mrs. So-and-so too. Was she as bad with y'all as she is with us? Oh yeah, you didn't mess with her. And what happened was that district, we started every day feeding the crowd. Not feeding them as a food truck, but feeding them as police officers going up and they're eating. I said, look, eat at the same time, sit down on the curb. And some of the officers initially felt uncomfortable about sitting down when you're in a crowd, which all the tactics briefing said, crowd's gonna be violent, they're gonna throw things at you, they're gonna do things. In other districts, they did because there was this dichotomy because they stayed. It was like the great big Egyptian river gap. There was no moving forward. After the 3rd day, it turned in from the other districts, which were having battles and making arrests for legitimate things, to this was essentially a yard party. They got to know the kids got to know them. The kids just would go up to the altar and say, what's that thing on your belt? Well, that's a taser. Well, what's that? Can I touch it? That's unheard of. Be able to do that. People don't want to be touched, but the importance of it is you humanize everybody. What's your name? My name is Mike. Well, why did you want to become a cop? You ever kill anybody? And that's not a question any officer wants to answer, but the kids want to do it, and all of a sudden the conversation went from cop to hello, Officer Smith, or hello that, and every day it turned into a situation where everybody looked forward to coming back to duty that day. So the important things in conversing is, number one, it's hard. It's hard to talk to strangers. It's hard to go to someone and say, hi, I'm Mike. What's your name? And when we humanize people, we say, hey, you gonna be back here tomorrow? Yeah. Well, can you tell us some more stories? And when we did that, the whole tone of that district calmed down to a situation where we had a big picnic, we funded that, we sat and talked about it, and then we actually said, this is what we know about what happened. Well, why don't y'all know all about it? I said, well, it's like so many other organizations, it's not our problem at that time, but we want to make it right with you. So the importance of being able to look at somebody in the eye, put your hand out and say, hi, I'm Mike. What's your first name? You know, where do you live? What's going on out there? So the deputy commissioner came out and he said, this is so quiet out here. We've been listening to the radio traffic and is it as bad as the other districts? So no, so, you know, we've continued this. So the lesson learned from this is reach out. Everybody has that story, and guess what? Everybody would love to be heard. It's hard to speak out to some people. I grew up on a tobacco farm, and I talked to pigs, and I talked to tobacco, and I talked to everything else I wanted to do. But after a while, we got to know so many different people that were working with crops. When you walk out and say, hi, my name is, and when you do that forward, instead of waiting for someone else to come to you, one of the best things I can tell you is go to your communities. Don't wait for them. When there's something going on, a block party, go there. And it's not just police, it's everybody in government, because really we're all in this together. The Anne Arundel police officers who had never been to that part of Baltimore, they weren't afraid, but they had a lot of trepidation because they heard a lot of bad rumors about it. Sure, it was some rough areas in terms of housing. So after the Freddie Gray case calmed down, we didn't stop there. We had an outreach where we went out and we talked to families and got to know them, and got to the point where we were being invited to do certain things. My spouse at the time, before she passed away, she says, are you going to Baltimore again in November? I wasn't consulting. I worked with him for so long. I was basically had cakes and pies made for me by some of the people in the Western District who could really cook. And so the important is, whatever we can do in terms of conversation, let's do it. Humanize yourself, spend the time, and it's not that hard. So I think one of the things, conversation is a lost art. And so I promise not to talk too long, but it's a simple story. You're human, so are they. Reach out to the people that you think are different. They're not that much different from us. I just say that for the grace of God, go out. People in the Western District, I go up there on a regular basis. I'm not afraid. I actually was able to facilitate a meeting with Baltimore police and gangs that had never been heard of before. And this is the last thing I'm talking about. We were concerned. Do y'all remember when the terrorist situations were on the cities, the threats came on the cities to attack them? We found out that the Baltimore PD intelligence unit would not talk to any of the gangbangers. They didn't have anything established. I said, I'll establish this. I said, we're gonna meet in Dundalk, 3 o'clock in the morning at IHOP. And everybody said, what? I said, yeah, we're going to IHOP. And so 3 o'clock in the morning, about 15 gang members, the top leaders came, and the officers and the supervisors came. And they started immediately talking about terrorism. I said, oh, we're not talking shop. First we eat. And then, of course, since we pay for it, the conversations, well, where do you work and what do you do? And then it turned into, we have this house in our community that we think they're terrorists. And I looked over at the intelligence officer. I said, what do you know about it? He said, we've never heard of them. And so they paid their things and went out. And so what happened was they ended up arresting an entire cell based upon the IHOP sharing. They made it. So what I encourage, what you're doing here, This is amazing to have all these jurisdictions sit together and talk about things. What you do, you have PlanRVA. Prior planning makes for amazing ways to happen. So the more we communicate, the more we humanize ourselves. It is amazing what Mike can do instead of Chief Jones or Mr. Jones. So any questions or comments you want to ask me, because you have such a rich group here. You have hundreds of years of experience, not in one person, but in the collective doing. And do you realize you're heroes? You have come up here and you work, and you're unsung heroes. A lot of people don't know you exist. But what you do is working, you're stoking the engine of community growth. And when you talk and all of a sudden you reach these common things, great things happen. I've been an admirer of you for a long time. So any questions, and I promise I won't take your time. Thank you for what you do, because all it takes is a little humanization. Questions, comments, concerns?
I'm not seeing any, but I do want to thank you. And as I'll come to you, and as I'm coming to you, I think there's a memory of you discussing communication between groups, like in the DMV area during 9/11, right? And if the groups had communicated, I believe you had said that they would have caught them before they got on the plane, right? Are you able to talk that within just a couple of minutes?
Yes.
Not 10,
Not 10,
just a couple, because I think it's important that people hear that portion.
So many people in cities wander around for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're homeless. But you may not know this, but the hijackers of 9/11 came to the Virginia DMV headquarters and got their license there. They waited in line with everybody else. And can you imagine standing beside those terrorists without knowing it? What they did. And the groups knew it. They knew that they were staying in certain places, but they had no outlet to tell it to. They were afraid that the police wouldn't listen to them, or they would arrest them. So having those doors open, not just police, because it's not just up to the police to do this. We're part of a community. When you see something, say something, put them together, and had people talked about their suspicions, we could have caught them right there. The aftermath of this, it was tragic, but it bothered me because we did the investigation. And we pulled them up on cameras. There they were waiting in line, attacking each other, and we sent that to DC. And everybody said, if only. What we don't want is any if onlys. So again, communication again, and the more we facilitate that, during the water crisis, communication was fairly well. It wasn't a good thing, but I've been through water crisis before in other jurisdictions which it actually put people together. So
Thank you.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Right now, I'll leave you with one thing. As a consultant, one of the things I do, I give my services away. So if you ever have any need for someone to talk to a group, I believe that what you do makes a difference 15 times over each day. The more times we talk, if you talk, they'll talk back. Thank you.
Thank you. That.
Was that short enough?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I had the pleasure of having a deep conversation with Mike Jones at Randolph Circle. It's a group of people who get together and discuss really difficult issues from extreme points of view. So to his point, it allows our community, in my opinion, to stay strong and also stay diversified. Partner reports, Ms. Schiffel.
Thank you. We've been closed reports from CBTA, the Emergency Management Alliance, and the TPO in the packet. I know Mr. Carson's here. Do you have anything you want to add to what's provided in the packet?
What do you think, Mr. Chair?
The packet does do a good job of encapsulating recent activity. We did have a meeting yesterday morning of the finance committee. And it was a working meeting, weren't any action items, but it was a great opportunity to talk about how we are going to be working more closely with PlanRVA, particularly Ms. Shepherd, to understand financial position of the CBTA impacts on all of the cooperative efforts of PlanRVA and the TPO. So I'm looking forward to diving into that over the next few months. The only other thing I would note is, each of you locally has heard about the draft recommendations on smart scale on the transportation side. Our region did very, very well, and there are some coordination efforts that are going on right now over the next few months at the local level with the Commonwealth Transportation Board, but we are looking forward to finalizing the smart scale awards, hearing that from the state in early summer. And again, we did very, very well. The leveraging capabilities that the CBTA has been able to provide, we think really impacted the success rate of this region to compete better with Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. So looking forward to maybe talking with you more about that in the next few months. Thank you very much.
Katie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but given some opportunity to maybe introduce Maddie might be nice. So Katie Moody has been on our staff for some time and has actually transitioned this month to take a leadership role with the Resiliency Hub work. And so she has been leading a recruitment effort that has brought Maddie to us, who just started work with us yesterday. So I'll let you do an introduction.
So I'm doing more of like an internal transition into more of the climate resiliency hub work that Martha mentioned, but we do have a new staff person who's come on yesterday to help take over some of the Emergency Management Alliance program work. Her name is Maddie. I'm really excited to have her here. This is her first commission board meeting, obviously, but she's been in a lot of meetings yesterday, and she's had a lot of schedule changes with the weather through her interviews and through now. So she's diving right into all the weather preparedness and all kinds of stuff, or good experience, I guess. So the Alliance is having their executive committee retreat tomorrow, and several of us will be there, including Lauren, Martha, myself, and Maddie. So yeah, we're excited to have another good year work with the Alliance, and we'll have more updates to come. So with Maddie gets settled.
And I know, Dr. Nebo, you were excited last week to hear the results of
Absolutely.
Smart Scale.
Absolutely excited. I mean, and I thank Chat and CBTA and all who helped us leverage what's going to be really a phenomenal year for us. I mean, yes, I'm sorry, I was pretty excited.
So to put a couple of finer points on it, takeaways that I recall from Miles's report last week at the TPO meeting, it is preliminary. It's the results of the smart scale screening and application review process. I think that our partners at VDOT were very careful to let us know that those things are subject to weather. And so certainly this week even with that, but I think we are excited to have seen the results of the smart scale process and the fact that our region fared, I'll dare say, best out of all regions across the Commonwealth and definitely in our district. And I think that the leverage was, if I recall correctly, it was a 4-to-1. And so really, this region's activation of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority and the work that we've done to be able to bring that leverage to the table is what's driving that competitiveness. We knew that in 2019 and in the onset of the CBTA, but this is the proof through making it through these subsequent rounds, if I can say that way, Chet. It's really, I think, a shining example of the collaboration that's happened and really in a very short amount of time, building that infrastructure to be able to make projects more competitive in the region. So it's very exciting. Thank you. And then just as an update, I shared with the executive committee, there was a somber discussion also after the celebration of smart scale progress, a somber discussion about our region safety targets for this coming year in transportation. And the TAC had a great conversation on Tuesday about how to move forward and has asked PlanRVA to look into the educational and public outreach component of what we can do to try to raise all modes, all modal users awareness of what it means to share the road. And so we're gonna be looking into that and figuring out what support we can provide to be able to bring kind of a unified message program to the community. So stay tuned.
This is great news.
So any member locality updates? Well, I'll give you one for the town of Ashland in case you just happen to be driving through and some of your constituents say, what's wrong with Ashland? Why do they have the Christmas tree still up? We have approved and are still working on more municipal parking behind our town hall so that the front will look more inviting, more people feel like they can park. And in addition to that, we're building storage for our tree so that our public crews don't have to go as far and we can set it up and take it down quicker. And rather than have them take it down and put it in the old storage and then move it again to the new storage, we're waiting and weather is permitting, it has slowed down that lot. So when that is done, you will see the tree come down. But that's why the town of Ashland still has a Christmas tree up, even though it's February.
I thought you were gonna say when the snow's over, we'll take it down.
Well, anyway, it's just it's the talk of the town for a lot of people. So anyway, anything else come before us?